our boys, our males, come into the world with a broader range of emotional expression than females do. We start telling them, little boys don't cry. Think of that, right? We let little girls cry. Little girls can cry and moan and complain. Little boys cannot.
Today, my guest is Dr. Gloria K. Vanderhorst. She has spent 50 years as a psychologist. Her new book is called How Not to F Up Being a Father, which I gotta be honest, I love that title. It is a manual for raising boys without emotionally stunting them. Dr. Vanderhorst, welcome to the show.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
I am
much.
really excited to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk. Let's start with system failure. In your book, you say expecting men to provide emotional guidance without ever being taught how is a complete setup for failure.
It is a setup for failure. All
Mm-hmm.
right. I will tell you kind of a little known fact, and that is that our boys, our males, come into the world with a broader range of emotional expression than females do. But by and large, child care at the infant stage is really done mainly by women, not by men. That trend is changing. There are many more men deciding to stay home and raise children while the wives go off to work. And in those households, I'm going to bet that there's a significant difference in what happens for the boys. But in the majority of households, mother or a female caretaker is still raising and taking care of the infant. And so, because boys naturally have a broader range of emotional expression, think about it in terms of an infant. That means the male infant is going to have a more intense cry, right? Or a more intense sense of sadness or a more intense exuberance, right? He's going to get excited in an upper range that mom or the female caretaker is not familiar with. And so, just normally and naturally, if someone that you're interfacing with, right, goes to an extreme, you're gonna have a reaction to it, you know? So, mother's gonna go, right, or make some kind of move that communicates to the infant, I don't get that. I don't like that, right? I don't understand that. Why are you doing that? Right? Why are you so giddy and silly? Or why are you so sad and irritated? And so when mother does that, infants are brilliant. They come into the world with reading the room around them as their survival mechanism. So when mother does that, they're brilliant very quickly. The little boy learns, oops, don't do that, right? Don't go high, don't go low. Just kind of keep your emotions here in the range that mother is comfortable with. So that's happens to infant males without any intent to change them or harm them. But then we put them on their feet, right? Little boys start to walk around. And guess what we do to them? We start telling them, little boys don't cry. Think of that, right? We let little girls cry. Little girls can cry and moan and complain. Little boys cannot. And that means that at that toddler age, the boy is trained to cut off access to, half of the feeling range, right? If I can't cry, if I can't be sad, that kind of means I can't be frustrated either, right? And I definitely could never be depressed. And so when you grow up under that system, you learn very quickly to limit the range of your emotional expression. And then when you become an adult, we do this turnaround. All right. Suddenly you develop an intimate relationship with a woman or with a man, and we suddenly tell you that you should have tender feelings, right? You should access these feelings that are on the lower end of the range. You should be able to be sad, to be tender, right? Not possible. Not possible. We have set you up for failure in terms of adult relationships. And honestly, the divorce rate supports that completely, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're fail-
Oh my goodness, that was a deep answer. I love that, and you brought it back to, if we're not being raised that way, why would we be expected to function that way as an adult? And that totally makes sense to me now. Wow,
Yeah, right. That's,
that totally makes sense to me now, and I'm glad you explained it in that manner. My goodness, that was a great answer. All right, let's talk about the co-founder dynamic. If a dad realizes he has to do the work to rebuild his own emotional capacity, how does he
mhm.
communicate that to his spouse? So how would my wife and I operate as a united front so she doesn't feel like she has a third child? We have two children right now, 1 and 4 at the moment. So how does she act and so she doesn't feel like I'm an extra child?
Yeah, that is a very great question.
Yeah.
And I want to set the stage for that first. And that is that we have this cultural expectation that women have the capability of supporting their husband in exploring feeling states, and that they're really interested in doing that. They're motivated to do that. But I think the truth of the matter is, if you look at the divorce rate, women are not being successful at doing that. And there's a good reason for that, right? Women do not have the skill set to facilitate tenderness in their husbands. In fact, it's kind of scary for them. If you come home from work and you're distressed about what has happened at work, right? Maybe this system of recording
Mhm.
doesn't work, right? And you're irritated about it, you're sad about it. You can display irritation, right? Your wife will be interested in irritation. But if you start to display sadness, your wife is going to try to placate you and shut that off. As a culture, we are not comfortable with men going into that range of feelings. Look at, go to a funeral, right? Watch the number of men who have just lost someone very important to them, and they're working so hard not to cry. So you ask the question, what does a wife do? All right. A wife should first face the reality that what she wants you to open up, all right? She wants you to disclose, she wants you to share the struggles that you're having. But honestly, when you start to do that, she gets uncomfortable. So, what the wife really needs to do is to face that reality and challenge herself to really take the time and put in the energy to encourage her husband to keep going, to keep talking. Typically, the guy comes home, he's distressed about something, he gives a headline, all right? None of my equipment worked today, right?
Mhm.
So I couldn't record anything, and I had all of these wonderful guests lined up. And now I have to reschedule everybody. All right. And she'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds like a really bad day." All right. You gave a headline. She gives a headline in response, but she doesn't say, "All right, sit down. I'm going to get you a cup of coffee or a glass of wine." All right. And we're going to talk about this. I want to know more of what that experience is like for you. She doesn't say that to her husband. If you were a female, that's exactly the direction she would move in. All right. If she's talking to a friend, she would say, "Hold on, I want to hear more.
Mhm.
Right? Let's get a cup of tea. Let's sit down and talk about this." And then they dive into a deeper conversation. Women are not trained to do that with their spouses. We've educated both the male and the female population that boys are not supposed to go into that soft emotional territory. And so they don't, and we don't help them get there. Although I will correct myself. All right, there are some groups spread throughout the United States that are male driven and male organized, and that is their purpose, to facilitate men learning that they do have access to the full range of emotion and helping them to, in group situations, take deeper dives into their own feeling states and to really learn how to share those deeper emotions with someone else. So there is a trend to educate the male population, but still, kind of the common process is men don't get that opportunity to take a deeper dive into their feelings. And that needs to change moving forward.
Yeah, I feel that personally. It's a societal norm of you have to close down if you feel sad and kind of keep it to yourself.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned the funeral. Recently just
Mhm.
lost my dog for having him for 14 years, and I
Mhm.
still
Yeah,
cry. I'll
that's
be honest with
hard.
you, I still cry, and I know it makes
Hmm.
my wife uncomfortable, so I honestly do that more in
Hmm.
solitary, away from
Right.
her, away from the kids, because I don't want I don't know. I just like you said, that is how it's set up for men and because as boys, we were taught that yeah, you bottle that up, like you're tough,
Yeah.
you you
Right.
you brush it off, like nothing bothers you,
Right.
right? That whole dynamic of
Right. Challenge your wife.
mhm.
Challenge your wife to be present and comforting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Really. You
That
know,
is a great
right?
answer. Oh my goodness,
That'll
you are
benefit both of you.
an amazing guest. Wow. Thank you so much for that. I have a couple more questions here. So, let's build a standard operating procedure. So, if a dad is listening on his commute right now and
Hmm.
realizes he has walled off his emotions, but desperately wants to raise an emotional, competent son, what would
Hmm.
step one be? And what is the very
Step
first daily
one,
habit
step
he needs to
one is
implement?
opening.
Yeah.
He has to open himself up,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
He has to, it is just like the advice on a plane, all right? Put your mask on first and then take care of your child. All right, put your life jacket on first and then take care of your child. So you have to take care of yourself first. So do a deeper dive into your own emotions. All right. My journal book that I've written is made for that deeper dive. In fact, there are two of them at this point. The first one is Read, Reflect, Respond, the 3 R's of Growth and Change. That book is designed for both men and women, but particularly for the male to learn how to take a deeper dive into emotions. The key to that is that there's an essay on one page and the facing page is blank. Typically, journals have lines expecting you to respond in words, but you have housed feeling states, particularly in the younger years, infancy, toddlerhood, preschool years, not in terms of language. We represent the world in three ways. One is language. We represent in terms of action and in terms of visual. Having a blank page gives you the opportunity to draw, to scribble, to be really intense with the feeling reaction to the essay. And I tell people you could tear the page if you wanted to, if you had that intensity, but you'd have to tape it back together to read the essay on the other side. But still, right, you need to educate yourself first as a father, expand your own range of capability for having feelings, labeling them. My website has a list of feelings on it. Anybody can go there and download that list of feelings. I tell people put a copy in the kitchen, put one in the area where the family gathers for television or games or puzzles, and put one in the bedroom so that you have easy access. The wonderful thing about your brain is that it is aware of every feeling a human being is capable of having. You can't produce it, but you can recognize it. If you read through the list of feelings, your brain will automatically lock into the one, two, or three feeling states that you're experiencing in that moment. And in that way, you've expanded your own feeling vocabulary. So it's an easy way. So I encourage you, go there, download
Mhm.
the feeling sheet and use it with your family. It'll make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I found your website as just such a wealth of knowledge, and I was perusing it before this meeting,
Good.
and or this interview, and I'm definitely going to go back and review that, because definitely want to be the role model for my 1-year-old son right now as he grows up, to
Good.
know and not have these issues as he becomes a man, and kind of break the cycle of what's going on here. And for the last part of this, I always like to kind of end with like a lightning round, just kind of a quick response, like whatever's on the top of your head. Is that okay? Just a few questions just to kind of
That'd be
get your
great.
your pulse. Okay. Um, so let's see here. All right, so question one. What is the most overused therapy buzzword?
You buzzword.
That parents misuse. Sorry, I didn't finish the question. That parents might misuse. There's probably a
I
lot.
would say I absolutely have no clue. Doing therapy for 50 years, buzzwords are not in my wheelhouse.
I guess okay, so let me redirect that. Is there something you're seeing like more of a trend of with parents misusing, kind of like, or maybe just like in terms of how they're raising their, your book talking about, boys in particular, like parents, like the different ways parents raise their kids now versus, you've been doing this a long
Oh,
time over
definitely.
the decades, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. Our children now are really overprogrammed and they are constantly into a device. Even your 1-year-old. I can't tell you the number of 1-year-olds that I have seen that are focused on a device, right? They're missing the world around them
Yep.
because they're focused on the device.
Awesome. Yeah, no, totally get that. I appreciate that response. Thinking back to the 90s era parenting, so when I was, kind of a child, what is one thing that that generation of parents got right that you're seeing now, and, maybe people my age now that are kind of like they're grown, and, what do you think their
Right.
parents got right with the parenting?
Yeah, I would call what they got right was free range, right? They let their kids go out into the neighborhood, ride their bikes, explore with friends. But nowadays, we had a family in the neighboring town that gave their kids permission to do that. right? To walk to the um, coffee shop or the place where there were shops available, to walk to school. And the police picked up their kids, brought them home, and told the parents that their kids should not be out walking around the town, right? These are, middle school and elementary school age kids, perfectly capable of getting on their bikes like you were able to do. And, riding all over the neighborhood. We don't let kids do that. We program them, and they are busy constantly. As soon as they're awake, they're busy. They
Absolutely.
don't get any down.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally get it's a totally different world, like you said. Growing up in that era of being riding bikes, playing basketball, playing sports in the front yard,
Yeah,
kind of just
right,
going and leaving at your leisure, knowing to come back when it gets dark. And now
right. Go
you
play in the
rarely,
woods, right?
yeah, you rarely see kids playing outside, and it's just it's
Hmm.
weird. It's a weird world that we're kind of I'm raising kids in now. It seems like it's so different from when I
Hmm.
was a child. If a toddler is having a last question here, if a toddler is having a full blown meltdown in public, just for full
Right.
disclosure, I have a child with autism. She's 4, so meltdowns are you never know. It could happen at any
Meltdowns will
time.
be coming.
What's your best one word mantra for dads? Like what would you say would be like the best way to sort of approach the meltdown to keep them?
Yeah, I would say, stop, get down on that child's level, even if that means, you're in the middle of the grocery store, right?
Yeah,
Sit down on the floor so that that child knows that you're present and that you're available and that you're accepting. Right? You're not going to be able to stop that. So I wouldn't make very strong efforts to stop it. It will run its course. Even a child who's having a tantrum, it will run its course. Your job is safety.
mm,
All right. I don't want them crashing into shelves. I don't want them doing any kind of self-harm. Your job is safety, is to provide the physical safety that that child needs. And by providing physical safety, you also are providing emotional boundaries.
love that. Love that. Definitely don't want to diffuse it as best you can and not to pour more fuel on the fire because I realize when my my daughter's having a meltdown, I can make it worse. Like we can,
Yeah.
there's action like they if we react poorly to that, it grows and it gets more
Mhm.
intense. And
Yeah,
so
and if
yeah.
if you're embarrassed
Hmm.
by that,
Hmm.
right? Children read your emotions. They're brilliant at it. So if you're embarrassed or you're ashamed in response to that, right? But if you can comfortably just kind of get down on her level, and I really mean it, sit down on the floor, provide safety for her until it runs its course, and it will be shorter if you do that.
Absolutely. That's great. And one last question I did lie, if that's okay. What is the best, and you talked about marriage and the divorce rates, and so I have to ask this. What is the
Mhm.
best 5-minute habit um, parents can do to keep a marriage strong while raising kids, while going through the chaos and, the high
Yeah.
stress. We talked about meltdowns and all of that that comes with parenting. What do you think would what's your advice for keeping a marriage strong in
Yeah,
2026?
you have to find time to connect, even if that's 15 minutes. All right. So maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning before you get everybody up and dressed and going. Maybe it's 15 minutes after dinner. Maybe it's 15 minutes after the kids have gone to bed. But it's 15 minutes facing each other and just talking, not problem solving, not scheduling, right? Not getting into conflicts, but, sharing, I saw a red bird out the window this morning. All right. Just sharing your experience of the day so that you take time to connect every day. And many parents just miss connection completely. They're so busy with responsibility, whether it's work or parenting, that they give up connection and they haven't talked to each other for weeks, right? Except to do the logistics of the family. But you want to maintain a relationship, you have to talk with your partner.
Yeah, I love that. Our licensed therapist, marriage therapist, she said the same thing. I guess it would be our couples therapist, but she said the exact same thing recently to us. So that's it's just that reinforcement and reminder that like communication really is key and you have to keep it up
It's you.
because it's easy to let it
Hmm.
go in the midst of
Hmm.
how busy life gets for everybody, right? And
Hmm.
like you said, even those small things. Oh, I saw that beautiful red robin outside my window or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that that's such uh a great antidote. I love that. This has been such a great interview. Is there anything, and I'm obviously gonna let my viewers know how to find your books and your website and all the resources you have to provide, but is there anything else you wanted to mention before we end this interview?
I would just encourage everyone to take themselves seriously, right? Really be interested in your emotional side, not just your physical side, all right? Lots of people are going to gyms, going to Pilates, taking really good care of their bodies. You have to take really good care of your brain and your relationships. So care about what's happening emotionally.